I'm not interested in doing anything that's just gonna be like a waste of my time or just a paycheck. I'd much rather spend time with people that I enjoy.
Childish Gambino just dropped his new album, Bandostone in the New World, a soundtrack for his major film, which honestly looks amazing. But also notably, this is his final album as Childish Gambino. Starting now, he has officially ended the Childish Gambino rapper persona, thus killing off an aspect of his creative identity that is arguably more popular than his own name.
Honestly, I call you Donald to other people too often, and they're like, I'm like Childish Gambino. I have to say Childish Gambino.
Despite having acted in blockbuster movies, hit shows, and starring in his own comedy special, his music is mainly what a large portion of his audience are attached to. But that's all coming to an abrupt end. But why would he do this? Kill off everything he's worked for? Well, the answer has been planned for nearly a decade, and he's been telling us in plain sight. From the very beginning, Donald honestly never saw himself the way others did. When he started rapping under the name Childish Gambino in college, from the start, he really didn't have this master plan to become this larger-than-life artist.
Honestly, I didn't expect this to ever become anything. I was just I'm just gonna start putting out stuff, it'll be funny.
Things he would often describe himself was a nerd, internet kid, awkward, but hardly ever a rapper.
I'm not a rapper.
I don't think I'm a rapper.
I don't even consider myself in the rap game.
In fact, when he was asked, he never really knew what to describe himself. This really didn't occupy his mind. What he cared about was one thing, and that was creating worlds.
I just want to make worlds. I'm not interested in making albums anymore.
But how he's done that has progressively changed throughout his career. Honestly though, none of this was ever planned. But from the outside, it looks completely planned. But that's because of one thing that makes Donald stick out more than anyone else, and has nothing to do with talent or skill. It's the ability to chase curiosity without labels. Labels given to yourself or by other people.
What's the reason I can't do what you do? And the reason is you just don't want to do it.
At the very beginning, Donald was creating sketches with Derek Comedy. He'd create 5-minute home video style sketches with friends in college. Although looking back, they're extremely low budget, it's the earliest signs of Donald creating worlds and feelings, even if the only real feeling is supposed to be laughter. These were actually pretty successful for the time, and it helped him get on the radar of the TV industry. After college, Donald took his next step and became a writer. He ended up writing for Conan O'Brien and famously NBC's 30 Rock.
I got the big break to write on 30 Rock for 3 years, right when it started.
He also did stand-up comedy on the side as well. But during this, he was always creating music, starting with mixtapes, but eventually leading up to his first big release, Camp, an album that started getting the public to know who Childish Gambino was instead of Donald Glover. And it was even getting to the point where jokes were popping up, ironically pointing out that Donald Glover and Gambino might be the same person. In this early 2010s internet, it was hilarious, trust me. But what Camp showed the world was elements of Donald just simply creating for himself and a protest against labels.
I made the album for me when I was 13. I made it for black kids specifically who are told who they are all the time.
At this point, Donald was becoming a rising artist, an actor on a successful show, and a comedian with his own special. It's easy to see that he's made it as a creative. His career is frankly only going to accelerate at this point, but making it was never Donald's goal.
Because I don't believe in making it. I don't believe it's oh, you made it. It's just you just put that stuff out there.
So for the next few years, Donald would continue to release music and act in Community. In 2013, he released a massive project in Because the Internet, a huge creative undertaking, mainly due to its focused theme and creative elements surrounding the album. But really, Donald probably wouldn't even agree with that statement because he never wanted to label it an album. Inspired a lot by Kanye's musical style, he was a lot more focused on creating a feeling, and the music was frankly just a tool to create that.
I want to make worlds and stories that people can live in for years if they wanted to.
Album is actually accompanied by a screenplay that is meant to be read while you listen. And really, this album should be seen as more of a movie score. Even this being early on in the Childish Gambino saga, Donald seemed to be rejecting any notion that his identity was a rapper or musical artist. Mainly because he actually saw albums as almost a futile attempt to create a full story.
Album, it doesn't mean anything. Music doesn't mean, it means as much as you put into it, and we don't have time to put anything into it. So I don't see the point of making albums.
Because the internet was a major success for Gambino, but at the same time, Donald felt like he was missing something more. You could see signs in the album's rollout that Gambino's creativity was stunted by traditions of album releases, with executives actually warning him not to release it in wintertime or near Drake's release because it could potentially hurt sales. But he did it anyway because it meant more to him to do it that way. And he almost really diminishes music's creative impact in the world and merely sees it as an avenue to get places.
Trying to get people to just invest in the album is kind of like trying to make people pay for just the smell of your bakery. So I try and connect with my fans or just people
through other stuff too.
For the first time really in Donald's career, he's at a major crossroads. He has this huge goal of creating worlds on a larger scale, but right now he's so limited to his time and what he's able to do. Does he leave Community and pursue that full time? Or does he stay where he's at and continue the success he's already gotten? Well, Donald ended up betting on himself and leaving one of the most popular shows on TV to pursue his own thing. A lot of fans speculated that he did this to start taking rap more seriously or even because of depression, but the truth was actually a lot more simple than that.
Community was my career. I loved working there, and then by the end it was a job.
This really falls in line with a lot of Donald's decisions from the outside perspective seeming a lot more complex and thought out than they actually are, when it's really just him following his curiosity. Many people in his position would stay on the show simply because they see themselves as an actor, but Donald didn't see himself as an actor or even a rapper.
You found the thing that you're supposed to do, and they keep doing. It's like most people keep growing and wanting to find things that they love.
His only goal was to create and not to be limited by putting yourself in a box, and he saw acting as a box.
I don't feel like it's fair to be limited, especially if you can do all those things.
Donald would then go on to create his own show, Atlanta. Donald's biggest career success at this point, and winning several awards and being one of the network's biggest successes. Simultaneously, while premiering this new show, within the same week he'd release his new project, Awaken My Love. By far Donald's biggest creative risk he'd take at this point. Pitchfork wrote, his hardest left turn yet, ditching rap wholesale in favor of funk worship, and the result is his most enjoyable project to date. This album was an unexpected twist in the Gambino universe, and this is where he went from talented artist to someone who's willing to take risks and demand the world's attention.
There's so many artists who come out now who are just they're like, this is my audience, and I'm just gonna make stuff for them, and that's it. And they'll give it back. They give me money, and I'm like, cool, and that's it. They go back and forth. I'm like, nah, that's not a conversation.
Most people look at this and can't believe someone's able to do this many different things at one time. But Donald actually sees this all as one thing. He's using the same focus he had since he started out writing sketches for Derek Comedy, and it all ultimately came down to one simple idea.
I just wanted to tell stories. At the end of the day, all of this really is about stories.
Now Donald was entering the ether of top-tier artists. He made an appearance on a Spider-Man film, an appearance that was important for a lot of reasons that I can't really get into at this point. He played a large role in a Star Wars film. Atlanta continued to get better and better and captivate the world. He hosted SNL and released his magnum opus, This Is America. Donald is everywhere. Him leaving Community proved to be the most pivotal moment of his career, and it's the point that everything shifted. From the very beginning, he always wanted the brand of Childish Gambino to evolve over time.
I've always thought of it as a metaphor for somebody like a child growing into a boss like a Gambino.
And this time of his career is flourishing into something that seemed far-fetched from his early mixtape days, but it's not even over yet. To know where Donald's mindset is at, you have to know the story of an even bigger artist, Kanye West. Even though his creativity seems boundaryless, he has hit his ceiling, at least in the industry. After years of fighting to be a rapper from a producer, the world really can't see him as anything else.
And I've got to a point that Michael Jackson did not break down. I have reached the glass ceiling as a creative person, as a celebrity. And I've been at it for 10 years. And I look around, I say, wait a second, there's no one around here in this space that looks like me. And if they are, they're quiet as
Donald, on the other hand, partially sees his career as a privilege. While a lot of artists would fight hard to be labeled as a rapper or a musician, Donald uses the lack of labels as a superpower to take the baton of where Kanye could not go and venture farther into the creative world.
When Kanye talks about the glass ceiling being there, of I can't do anything because they see me as a rapper, that's my superpower, is that people don't see me as a rapper.
While Kanye had certainly had success in industries outside of music, it hasn't been without years and years of struggle.
Am I venturing into the fashion industry? Do you see this cup?
So as Donald enters his new chapter of his career and sets off to embark in a new industry where he kills off Childish Gambino, it's not because he's sick of rapping or just because he's an eclectic creative. The intentions behind Donald's career path go so much deeper. He feels like he has a service to uphold, and he's given this massive opportunity to create worlds that live forever, and the only way to do that is to think larger than he has ever before. Music has just been the first stepping stone to get to that point, just like writing and sketch comedy before.
People don't understand that music is advertisement for a brand. People trying to make you be like, no, live with this. No, you got to build a bigger world.
Every moment in Donald's career trajectory has been a buildup of skills. He wrote comedy at the beginning with Derek Comedy, then learned to write stories with the Simpsons spec script and 30 Rock, then learned acting and music with the Community and Camp, then built worlds with Because of the Internet in Atlanta, and was involved in box office movies like Star Wars. Now he's finally putting it all together. Funny enough though, a lot of these steps were foreshadowed in high school, as in his high school yearbook photo, he wore a Star Wars shirt and also won the superlative superlative than most likely to write for The Simpsons. And he was even quoted saying he wants to work for SNL. A coincidence? Most likely. But knowing Donald has always followed his interests, it's also not divine intervention. As for will Childish Gambino ever make a triumphant return back into music? Despite all of this, I actually think so. It's not uncommon for rappers to retire only to change their mind thereafter. Hell, even Donald has done it himself many times. And if we've learned anything about Donald and how he creates, he will follow his curiosity. And as a Childish Gambino fan, I really hope he finds his curiosity in music again, because I believe he has so much more music left on the table.